In this lesson, we're going to look at a small library called rdbug. This comes from a very well-respected developer in the WordPress community and gives us some helpful functions for debugging in general, but specifically for drilling down into actions and finding out what functions are hooked into them. This rdbug library lives on this gist here from Rarst, the developer who created this, who is, as I said, very well respected and has some great work and resources in WordPress. And while this does a lot of different things like help with performance, listing different constants, PHP that are on the page, dumping things out, cron jobs, specifically we're interested in this function called list hooks. So what I've done in this example file is created a new folder called library and dropped into that a file called rdbug in which I pasted that gist. Then in my functions.php file, I have a line here requiring that file to be loaded. Now, if you've worked with PHP before, require and directory file name, all of these things should make sense. But if you haven't, these are not specific WordPress things, but rather PHP. And as you've probably noticed, you're getting to the point now where you're going to start seeing more PHP along with WordPress stuff. However, all that to say, once this line is called, then anywhere in our theme, we could use that rdbug. So if I come into my index.php, you see I have my rdbug class and then I'm calling the list hooks method. What this is going to do is pretty much the same thing as WP filters, except it will show it in a much nicer format. So if we come over and look at our site, we could see all of the actions and filters listed out along with the priority and what's hooked into them. You could see just at a glance that this is a much nicer view and would make it easier for tracking down specifically what you're looking for, as well as all of the different things plugged into it. Now, just like with WP Filter, we could also drill down further and look at one action in specific and see that listed out just as we would expect, but in a nicer format. So while this does some of the very same things that WP Filter does with just pre-tags and a dump, you could see how with a little bit more care and attention, he's displayed this in a much nicer and easier to use format. So at this point, you could follow the example that I set of including this rdbug library in your own theme or plugin, or you could simply resort back to using WP Filter on its own with some pre-tags. However, I think you'll find this library really helpful as you continue on in your WordPress development career.